What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in this video I'm going to be going through my top 24 Dynasty Superflex rankings. It's obviously important to hit on some of your later round picks in Dynasty startup drafts, but if you're whiffing in round 1, round 2, round 3, it's going to be really tough to build a strong core for your roster. So hopefully this video helps you guys go out there and dominate the early rounds or make some nice trades for your Dynasty rosters. But let's just dive right into it. I've already gone through my positional rankings, so top 24 running backs, wide receivers, quarterbacks already posted, and then top 18 tight ends. So this video is going to be more based around comparing the different positions and how they're tiered, more so than like breaking down every individual player. If you want the individual player breakdowns, have those videos already posted. But starting off in tier 1, I have a clear top 2 here. It's Josh Allen, it's Patrick Mahomes. These two have already proven to be very consistent year after year, and they're high ceiling producers at the quarterback position, which is obviously incredibly valuable for Superflex. Josh Allen has averaged over 23 points per game for 4 straight seasons, and then Patrick Mahomes has 24 or more points per game in 3 of his 6 full seasons as a starter. Plus, he has an upgrade in weapons, so I'm expecting a bounce back after, a somewhat down year for him last year. Now, shifting into tier 2, it's also going to be all quarterbacks. We're going CJ Stroud, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. I talked about this more in depth in the quarterback video, but I think a lot of people have CJ Stroud in that tier with Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, maybe even ahead of those two. For me, it just comes down to his ceiling. I think he lacks that elite upside just because he's not going to give you a ton of rushing production. Like from a real life perspective, he had an insane rookie year. He's going to be one of the top quarterbacks for a very long time. But fantasy-wise, you do really like to have that rushing upside to give you that huge ceiling. But CJ Stroud's 22 years old. Even if he's like a mid-tier QB1 fantasy-wise, he's going to give you that production for a very long time. So I have him here as my QB3. Then back to like that elite upside with Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson. Even though they're like 3 to 5 years older, I think they do possess a higher yearly ceiling than Stroud. Jalen Hurts has 20 plus points per game in 3 straight seasons. He's been a top 6 fantasy quarterback in all 3 of those years. And then he also just got A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith locked in long term. So his supporting cast should be pretty impressive also. Then for Lamar Jackson, as a full-time starter, his worst fantasy season is 19.7 points per game. He's rushed for over 750 yards in all 5 of his seasons as a full-time starter. So we know we're getting that rushing production. Also a very solid passer. So that's going to wrap up tier 2. Now shifting into tier 3, we're getting off the quarterback position, and it's just going to be 3 wide receivers. We're going Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. I have these guys behind the more proven high ceiling quarterbacks, but I have these wide receivers ahead of the proven quarterbacks who maybe don't have that elite ceiling, or the quarterbacks who may have that elite ceiling but just haven't necessarily proved it yet. So I think there's a sweet spot here where you can go after those higher end wide receivers, and I really think you could rank these 3 in any order. I go Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. I like Jamar Chase's long-term outlook with Joe Burrow at quarterback. You don't have like a locked-in solution for Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb, at least not to the caliber of a guy like Joe Burrow. For Justin Jefferson, I think he's the actual best player of these 3. Like if they were all in the same situation with a top quarterback, Justin Jefferson would be my top guy, but he kind of needs to rely on J.J. McCarthy hitting in this offense, and while it is a great situation for a rookie quarterback, there's no such thing as like a sure thing, locked-in QB prospect, and it's also not like McCarthy was like a Caleb Williams level prospect, right? He's a little bit, a few tiers lower in terms of, being a quarterback prospect. But if McCarthy hits, I think Justin Jefferson is going to be an awesome option moving forward. And then the last guy here, CeeDee Lamb, coming off a wide receiver 1 season, you're just kind of hoping that Dak Prescott gets an extension with this offense. Now pivoting into tier 4, we're going back to quarterbacks. We're going to start off with Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert here. I think both these guys have proven that they're elite real-life NFL quarterbacks. I think both these guys can hit 22, 23 point per game seasons in big passing years, but neither guy has a ton of rushing upside. Like they can give you 300 yards, 3, 4, 5 touchdowns, but they're not giving you that like Lamar, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts production. I feel like everyone can agree on that. Behind those two, I'm going with Caleb Williams, a top-tier quarterback prospect, an amazing year 1 landing spot here with DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift. So really like Caleb Williams. Probably has slightly more rushing upside than a guy like Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert. Not competing with those top dogs, but we also have to, make sure he comes in and plays at a high level like we're kind of hoping for here. And then behind them, we're going with Anthony Richardson and Kyler Murray. Both these guys have some rushing upside. I think Richardson really has some game-breaking rushing upside. Kyler Murray's rushing has fallen off a little bit, also coming off the ACL, but even before that, he had limited it a little bit. Anthony Richardson was a monster with his legs in the 4 games he played, or like 2 games and then like 2 halves in his rookie year before he got injured. He's probably the best athlete to ever play the quarterback position. The dude is a physical freak. He has weapons around him. I think Richardson's going to be a very nice fantasy option. And then Kyler Murray, love the addition of Marvin Harrison Jr. to that offense. I talked about this in the quarterback video. I really do think he's one of the more underrated dynasty assets. He's consistently giving you strong production. He's building a nice core of weapons behind him, with Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride balling out last year, especially in the second half of the season. Also drafting like a potential running back replacement in Trey Benson. So I do also like Kyler Murray's outlook here. And then pivoting into tier 5, getting away from the quarterback position for the most part, a lot of position players here. We're going to start off with Marvin Harrison Jr., just a great prospect. Love the landing spot here with the Cardinals. Another wide receiver behind him with Amon-Ra St. Brown, coming off a wide receiver 4 finish in points per game. Signed an extension. Looks like this offense is going to have a pretty similar core moving forward. Jared Goff probably going to get an extension. Great situation to be in here for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Expecting a lot of like mid to high end wide receiver 1 seasons in his future. Then we're going back-to-back running backs, the first running backs in these rankings. Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall. I think both these guys have crazy high ceilings at the running back position. They both have 3-down skill sets. Great pure runners while also having that receiving upside, and they're both getting quarterback upgrades. Bijan Robinson with Kirk Cousins, and then Breece Hall with Aaron Rodgers, hopefully actually playing for them this year and not blowing out his Achilles in the first game. After those running backs, going with Puka Nacua as the final wide receiver in this tier. Just an amazing rookie season, 17.6 PPR points per game. I think you could make an argument to have him ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, I think if you were going to ask me, like, what an awesome season for Marvin Harrison Jr. would be, you would probably say, like, 17 PPR points per game. Puka Nacua already did it. So you could make the argument, like, Puka's already on that track to be a stud. And then same thing for Amon-Ra, right? Like, Puka's year 1 was pretty much what Amon-Ra did in year 2. So I think the argument's there. I slightly prefer those other guys, but same tier. It's very, very close. And then wrapping up here with Jordan Love. So in my quarterback video, I had Jordan Love in the same tier with the quarterbacks we're going to see in tier 6, but I do think he's just slightly ahead of those guys. Not quite in that group, ending with Richardson, Kyler Murray, but I do think he belongs here in tier 5. In his first year as the full-time starter, he was the quarterback 5 in points per game, so he played really well. I think this offense is just going to continue to get better. The weapons were so young, and they were still a really impressive offense. You have Christian Watson, you have Wicks there, Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs. You have the young tight ends, Musgrave, Kraft, Josh Jacobs coming in, drafted Marshawn Lloyd. So a really young unit, pretty much aside from Josh Jacobs, and they all should just continue to get better with each other. And then shifting into the 6th and final tier, we're going to start off with Trevor Lawrence. Some people might think this is too high. I'll admit he's been disappointing through his first 3 seasons in the NFL, but I also think he's given you fine fantasy production, like back-end QB1, high-end QB2. I think better seasons are ahead, and I also think he's played well enough where he's going to be a locked-in starter for his entire career. Like, he's there at that point. I think, like I said, I think he's going to have better fantasy options moving forward, better seasons, so he's going to lead this tier. Then we're going to go with Malik Neighbors. Don't love the landing spot, obviously, with the Giants, but I don't think it's a killer. He truly is an elite wide receiver prospect. I had him and Marvin Harrison Jr. neck and neck. It just came down to the landing spot. So if Neighbors went to the Cardinals and Marvin Harrison Jr. went to the Giants, they'd pretty much just be flipped in these rankings. That's how close I had those dudes heading into the draft. And I think it's also, even if he struggles early on, the quarterback situation isn't great. We've seen guys like Garrett Wilson, Drake London, really solid wide receiver prospects who gave you like decent production, weren't killing it for fantasy, but like they were giving you decent production in terrible offensive situations, and their values have not tanked at all. Now, they both kind of got somewhat lucky, I guess, with Drake London having Kirk Cousins coming in. Garrett Wilson with Aaron Rodgers coming in. If those solutions weren't there, maybe they're not retaining their value or, still valued highly. But I do think people are pretty aware. They understand if a situation's terrible, it's going to be tough to put up big numbers. So I think Malik Neighbors does belong here towards the top of tier 6. Then Garrett Wilson, just mentioned him. I'm expecting a huge season here out of Garrett Wilson. He's put up solid production in year 1 and year 2 with just like bottom of the barrel quarterback play. Now he's getting Aaron Rodgers. Like I said, I'm expecting wide receiver 1 production. Then we're just going back-to-back rookie quarterbacks here. Daniels and May are pretty interchangeable for me. It seems like consensus, pretty clearly prefers Jane Daniels, so I'm fine giving him the edge. I do agree that Jane Daniels probably has the more nuclear ceiling, just given his rushing upside. I think Drake May probably has the slightly better odds to be like a locked-in long-term starter, but both are pretty high ceiling fantasy players, and both are going to get every opportunity just given their draft capital and where they've gone. Like, these teams are banking on them to be the quarterbacks of the future. So that's going to wrap it up for my top 24 Superflex rankings. Let me know your guys' thoughts. Which players do you have higher or lower? I'd love to hear the feedback. So thank you all again for stopping by. I will see you in the next one.